You ever walk into a place and just know before anyone even says a word that you don't belong? That was me that sweltering afternoon, rolling up to Desert Star Motors, Nevada sun practically melting the paint off my old SUV. Nothing about me looked like I was shopping for a luxury car-plain cotton dress, sandals older than some of the cars on the lot, and a purse that had seen better decades. But what nobody there knew was tucked inside that purse right next to my wallet was a secret that could upend the whole place, turn their picture-perfect world inside out. You know what I mean? Sometimes the one thing people overlook is the one thing that changes everything. I pushed open the showroom doors, nearly got slapped in the face by a wall of icy, as it's almost criminal how cold it was in there after baking in a car. Lights bright enough to see your own regrets by, chrome shining everywhere, new car smell thick enough to taste. But none of that masked the real, sent the sharp whiff of judgment, the way every single person clocked me and decided, right then, I didn't fit. That's how places like this work. You can practically feel it in the air. Who belongs, who doesn't, and who they hope slips out before anybody important notices. I headed for the front desk. Cluster of salespeople, crisp shirts, polished shoes, snickers barely hidden like they were all in on a private joke, and I was the punchline. The laughter wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It came in those tight, fake smiles, the sideways glances, the whispers that float just out of earshot, poking at you until you wonder if you really are the odd one out. I could have let it shrink me, but 9 years of that nonsense teaches you to spot it, catalog it, and use it. So I started paying attention, really watching, wanting to see what kind of place Desert Star Motors really was underneath the shine. In the middle of the showroom stood Margaret, the manager, cutting through the chaos like she owned the air itself. Reputation for being sharp as a tack, kept everything in line. She zeroed in on me faster than a vulture on road cologne. Look at my dress, my purse, and I was officially classified, not our type. She approached, all stiff shoulders and controlled expression, smile so thin you could shave with it. Her words, well, they were polite enough, but everyone held at arm's length, a reminder I was a guest in a world with strict boundaries. She asked how she could help, but when I mentioned the new electric SUV fancy one they just announced, you'd think I'd asked to see the Hope Diamond. Margaret, not missing a beat, rattled off policy and insurance reasons, special viewings, qualified clients only, blah, blah, blah. Her voice stayed sweet, but what she was really saying was, not for you. The way she drew that line, you could tell she'd had plenty of practice. Off to the side, a couple employees, Tom and Crystal, hovered by the coffee station, watching like it was some reality show. Every time Margaret blocked me, they shot each other those little nods, the kind that say, business as usual. But the thing is, I didn't get mad. Didn't even raise my voice. Just nodded along, taking in the whole performance. That calm must have thrown her off more than yelling ever would. People like her, they were ready for drama, not for somebody who simply refuses to play the part. When she handed me a list, nothing but old beaters and rust bucket trucks, I glanced at it, then looked her straight in the eye and, as nicely as I could, asked why she'd show me those when I'd come for the latest model. For a second, you could see the color climb her cheeks, but she buried it quick, hiding behind more talk of policy and rates, while the staff tried not to laugh. Yeah, that happened. You could feel the cold in the room, everyone waiting for me to give up and skulk out the door like so many before. But I didn't move. Just folded that list nice and slow, made it clear I wasn't embarrassed. That, right there, pulled a different kind of attention. The room got quieter. I could see it, people wondering if maybe, just maybe, something wasn't quite right about how this was going down. Then I did something small, but it felt huge. I reached out and touched the grill of that electric SUV, the one I was supposed to stay away from. Margaret lost her voice, cracked through the room, calling me out in front of everyone. Suddenly, all eyes were on us. Margaret demanded to know what I was doing. I looked her dead in the eye and calmly asked who actually made decisions around here. My tone was soft, but the room caught its breath. She snapped back, told me to leave, her voice a shade too loud, but even the bravest staff started to fidget. It was clear this wasn't just about a car anymore. I gathered my things, looked around at the crowd, and said, thank you. I'm sure today's one nobody will forget. Not angry, just steady. As I walked for the door, The mood shifted. Some of the folks who'd smirked now looked away, maybe a little ashamed, maybe just surprised that I'd held my ground. I paused at the exit, turned back, and called out loud and clear asking for the owner. Margaret's face stiffened. She told me he wasn't available, busy with meetings. You know how that goes. I smiled, reached into my bag, and pulled out my old flip phone. I said, well, I'll just call him myself. We met last spring at a conference. He said to reach out if I ever needed help with the dealership. The silence after that could have swallowed a truck. I dialed, said a few quiet words, but the whole room heard me say Jonathan Rogers, the regional director's name. It was like the temp dropped 10 degrees. Employees who'd strutted minutes before went pale. The jokers in the corner quit grinning, and customers hung back, sensing they'd stumbled into something real. A couple minutes later, in walks Jonathan himself, all business, but with a warmth Margaret could never fake. He headed straight for me, shook my hand, told the room how glad he was to see me. The atmosphere flipped on a dime. Margaret looked drained, staff fidgeted, and everyone knew the pecking order had just been tossed out the window. Jonathan didn't waste time, called everyone together, voice calm but firm. Inside the conference room, it was tense as a courtroom before a verdict. Then he dropped the bomb. Linda is the new owner of Desert Star Motors. Dead silence. Margaret's hands shook, knuckles white on her clipboard, and the rest looked like the floor might swallow them whole. She tried to apologize, voice cracking, but Linda just nodded, not making a show of it. She said, respect isn't about titles. It's about how you treat people. That hit harder than any speech. Then, she asked if had she not been the owner, would she have gotten the same respect? The question just hung there, and nobody dared answer. Because everyone already knew. The awkward silence turned honest for once. Linda said what needed to be said. Desert Star needed a change, not just rules, but hearts. She asked people to open up. Slowly they did. Chris, the quiet one, admitted he'd stayed silent when jokes went too far. Lucy owned up to ignoring new staff. Even Margaret said she'd been too harsh, thinking toughness kept things running, but now she saw she'd been part of the problem. Then Daniel, the finance guy, said he'd always focused on numbers, closing deals, bringing in money, but now realized people mattered more than profit. Desert Star could be known as the place where everyone matters, he said. For the first time, hope flickered. People saw a chance to build something better. Linda outlined a new training program, real change, not just ticking boxes. No one exempt. If you couldn't get on board, you couldn't stay. That landed with weight, but it was fair. For the first time, the silence felt full of possibility, not fear. People began to speak honestly about mistakes, about wanting to do better. The meeting ended, and as Linda wandered the floor, the sun came through the windows, catching the chrome, making the place feel new. Even Margaret thanked her quietly, genuinely. Linda reminded her that change isn't what you promise, see, it's what you do every day. Over the next weeks, the vibe changed. Chris listened more, Lucy lent a hand, Daniel cared about people as much as numbers. Customers came in and felt welcome, not judged. The place buzzed with kindness, not tension. I watched from my office, knowing change wouldn't be instant. Habits run deep. But every small gesture showed progress. From now on, every guest would be met for who they were, not for what they wore or what they drove, but for the dignity they brought inside. So, let me ask you, if you'd walked into that showroom, how would you have been treated? Would it be different if you looked the part, or if you owned the place? Where's the line between fairness and old habits? Tell me what you think. Does respect depend on a job title or something deeper? Let's hear your story, so let's talk about what real change means and who gets to decide when it's enough.